This is the most important part. This is right after she was saying, we are run by ABC News. You should trust us, not Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons.
I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know who Sunny Hostin was. I actually still really don't know. So I wasn't expecting necessarily for her to kind of try to ambush me in that way and attack my...
Caroline Leavitt has reportedly taken a step that caught many people off guard, choosing not to respond through interviews or media appearances, and instead moving directly into legal action with a massive lawsuit. That unexpected decision has suddenly shifted the entire conversation surrounding Sunny Hostin, The View, and the broader debate about what is acceptable on national television. At the same time, the issue gained even more attention after Joe Rogan discussed it on his platform, pushing the story into an even larger public spotlight. As reactions spread across different media spaces, the situation has evolved into something much bigger than a simple on-air disagreement. It has turned into a wider discussion about responsibility, boundaries, and the influence of major television networks. Now, people are closely watching how this develops because it may become a defining moment in how such controversies are handled going forward.
Oh, yeah. Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because...
Like most moments on The View, it began in familiar fashion, strong opinions at the table, overlapping voices, and a fast-moving debate where everyone is trying to be heard at once. On any other day, it might have followed the usual pattern. A few clips circulating online, some heated reactions on social media, and then it would fade away by the next morning. That's often how daytime television cycles work. Comments are made, attention briefly spikes, and then the next segment takes over. But this time, the outcome was different. The reaction didn't fade or settle into background noise. Instead, it hit a nerve, spread quickly, and gained momentum far beyond the studio audience. Rather than being forgotten, the moment kept resurfacing, pulling in new voices and new reactions as it moved across different platforms.
The Democrat Party's main constituency are made up of Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals.
Hearing that, it's deplorable. And I'm using that word on purpose.
Yeah.
Because what happened next completely changed the situation. It was no longer just another television controversy or a passing media debate. The discussion moved beyond political commentary and straight into the legal arena, and that shift changed the stakes entirely. Once that happens, the rules are no longer the same. Statements that once felt like casual remarks on live TV can suddenly be treated as serious material under review. Lawyers begin examining everything closely, every comment, every joke, every sharp exchange, to understand what was said and in what context. What once belonged to entertainment or opinion now gets measured in a completely different way inside a courtroom setting. And in that environment, the tone shifts from reaction and debate to scrutiny and evidence.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism. That DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being...
At the center of this situation is Caroline Leavitt. Instead of responding the way many public figures typically do, appearing on news networks, pushing back in interviews, and moving on after a cycle of media attention, she reportedly chose a much more serious route. Rather than treating it as a public debate, she escalated it into a legal matter by filing a large $800 million lawsuit against the network and individuals involved at the table. That scale alone signals how serious she considers the issue to be. This isn't framed as a request for clarification, an apology, or a partial correction. It's being presented as a direct challenge, shifting the dispute into a setting where public reactions and studio audiences no longer matter. In a courtroom, applause and strong opinions carry no weight. What matters is evidence, procedure, and accountability. That change in environment is what makes this development feel so significant compared to the usual cycle of televised controversy.
I have a very quick statement.
Yes, it's not going to be that quick.
Pete Hegseth has denied any wrongdoing. His lawyer said he paid the woman in 2023 to head off the threat of a baseless lawsuit. No charges were ever brought.
Sunny Hostin, however, stands out in a way that makes this situation even more complicated. She wasn't just another voice at the table. She was one of the most confident, outspoken, and forceful presences on the panel, and on The View, that kind of energy is often rewarded by the format and the audience. Strong opinions, delivered with certainty, are part of what drives the show's dynamic. But her background makes her role look different from everyone else involved. Before television, she worked as a federal prosecutor and later built a career as a legal analyst explaining how the law works and how words can carry consequences beyond a simple debate. That legal perspective has been a key part of her public identity. Because of that, some critics are now asking a more difficult question. If anyone at the table understood the possible legal implications of what was being said, it would likely be her. And yet, from that perspective, the argument being made is not just about what was said, but about whether enough attention was given in the moment to how far things were going and what risks might follow.
The Democrat Party's main constituency are made up of Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals.
Okay, and then yesterday, get that, and yesterday she posted a...
Just as the pressure was building, and media critics, commentators, and legal experts were beginning to pick apart every moment of the program, the situation shifted again in a completely unexpected way when Joe Rogan entered the conversation. His platform brought a new wave of attention to the issue, pushing it far beyond its original audience and turning it into a much larger public debate. What had already been spreading through traditional media and online discussion suddenly reached an even wider audience, adding new perspectives and intensifying the scrutiny around everything that had been said so far.
Attack my character in that way, and I responded to it in the moment as I do, and I didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, but I think it...
When Joe Rogan talks, it tends to shift the scale of a story. His podcast is widely regarded as one of the most influential long-form shows in the world, reaching a massive audience across different platforms and often generating more attention than traditional media segments. Unlike traditional television formats, his show doesn't rely on scripts, teleprompters, or tightly controlled timing. Instead, the conversations are extended, open-ended, and often unfiltered depending on the topic he chooses to explore. In this case, he didn't just lightly comment on what happened on The View. He took a much more critical tone, questioning the entire segment and describing it as overly dramatic, performative, and disconnected from reality. He also pointed to what he sees as a repeating pattern in similar television discussions: strong, confident statements delivered in a studio setting that may not hold up under closer scrutiny outside that environment.
Together and stop being crazy. Well, she's making a lot of money off of being...
And when he focused specifically on Sunny Hostin, the tone shifted from general criticism to sharper commentary that many viewers interpreted as ridicule. It wasn't just about disagreement anymore. It became the kind of moment that spreads quickly online, gets clipped into short segments, and is repeatedly shared across social media. Once that happens, the discussion often moves beyond the original context of the conversation and turns into something much larger, shaped by reactions, edits, and interpretations from a wide audience.
That straightened me up pretty quick.
You can see the way Sunny Hostin, the way she's touching her above her eye, and she can't even look at him because she's an activist.
At that point, the focus of the discussion began to shift away from legal questions and toward credibility and trust. Once Joe Rogan's audience, large, highly engaged, and often skeptical of mainstream media, encountered that framing, it helped reshape how the story was being interpreted. From there, the conversation spread quickly across different platforms. Clips circulated, commentary channels picked it up, and independent creators added their own reactions and analysis. Within a short time, the subject was no longer confined to one television segment or one industry space. Instead, it became part of a broader media debate, where people were connecting it to similar patterns they believe they've seen before in televised discussions and public commentary.
Podcaster Charlie Kirk called Behar's comment idiotic and bitter. Former Fox News host Megyn Kelly called the remark not true, but also added that the new Trump...
That's what critics are saying now, and they're saying it with growing intensity. In their view, Caroline Leavitt's experience wasn't an isolated incident or a random clash on live television. It fits into a broader pattern they believe has existed on The View for some time. They argue that certain guests, especially younger and more outspoken conservative women, are often talked over, interrupted, or turned into targets of jokes before they can fully express their points. From that perspective, Trust doesn't break suddenly. It erodes gradually when audiences start to see these moments as routine, rather than rare exceptions that at the same time, behind the public debate, a different kind of pressure is unfolding. Even if viewers only see the on-air exchanges, internal reactions can look very different. Legal teams begin reviewing what was said, executives focus on potential fallout, and different departments assess risk more carefully than before. In situations involving major lawsuits, every statement and segment can suddenly feel higher stakes because anything broadcast may be reevaluated through a legal lens. That kind of pressure doesn't just exist online. It can reshape how a network operates internally and how future content is handled. Within this context, Caroline Leavitt's response is being framed by supporters as a turning point in her public standing. Instead of being defined by the original controversy, she is now portrayed as someone who pushed back in a decisive way. From that angle, the narrative has shifted. She is no longer viewed simply as a guest caught in a heated exchange, but as someone who chose to challenge it on a much larger stage. And that shift, whether people agree with it or not, has become a central part of how the story is now being interpreted.
Well, with all due respect to my predecessor, she is one of the main culprits of the greatest cover-up and scandal in American history. She took the podium every day and lied to the press.
Because of that shift, the story is now being framed less as a defensive response and more as an offensive challenge. Supporters of Caroline Leavitt are openly backing this direction, arguing that it represents an approach that should have been taken much earlier. To them, it's a pushback against what they see as media arrogance, institutional bias, and the belief that certain voices on national television operate without meaningful accountability. Whether people agree with that interpretation or not, the momentum behind it is clearly growing. Each day, more commentary is added to the conversation, with some voices treating it as a serious turning point while others respond with sarcasm or criticism. Phrases like, "This is the beginning of a reckoning," are increasingly being repeated across different platforms, reflecting how quickly the narrative is expanding beyond its original context. Meanwhile, Sunny Hostin is now dealing with something that often proves even more difficult than current criticism: resurfaced footage. Old clips are being brought back into circulation, reanalyzed, and reinterpreted in light of the present debate. In the modern media cycle, past moments rarely stay in the past, and once a story reaches this level of attention, earlier statements often become part of the renewed scrutiny as well.
He decided to take up a few minutes of that precious 8 minutes and attack me as someone who's been co-opted by the right and someone who's a charlatan. And
did she use the term charlatan?
she did. And it's funny because I actually didn't notice it in real time. I kind of.
Afternoon, everybody. Good to see all of you here today. Before I discuss the ceasefire with Iran, I have a quick update from the First Lady of the United States.
As earlier comments and statements are brought back into circulation, people start re-examining things that were previously overlooked or dismissed. That's a common outcome in high-profile media moments. Once attention reaches a certain level, past clips and old remarks often get reanalyzed in a new light. In that environment, Joe Rogan's involvement is seen by critics and supporters in very different ways. While he didn't originate the controversy, his commentary amplified it significantly for a large audience that is already highly engaged and often skeptical of mainstream media. For many viewers, his reaction didn't introduce a new idea so much as reinforce an existing suspicion, giving it more visibility and weight simply because of his platform's reach. From there, the discussion expands beyond the individuals involved and moves into broader questions about media, responsibility, and accountability. People begin asking where the line is between protected opinion and statements that could lead to legal consequences. How far can commentary on live television go before it stops being just expression and starts being treated as potentially harmful in a legal sense? And what happens when a media environment that rewards bold, attention-grabbing statements comes into contact with systems built around verification, accuracy, and legal responsibility? Those questions are now sitting at the center of the broader debate, shaping how different audiences interpret everything that has unfolded so far.